have a very interesting panel, one I've never seen done in any family business education program, and that is we're going to do the next generation as couples. So we have one couple that both work together in the family business, and we have one couple that have independent careers and almost don't allow even the family members to work in the business. So what I'd like to do is ask each of our panelists, we'll start with Alex, to just talk for a minute about your career and what it means to you, and then we'll go from there. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. So my career, maybe I'll give a bit of background as well. So I'm French, Peruvian American, grew up in the States. My career started in New York after going to NYU and doing several internships in advertising, finance, television, tried to test several areas out, and then I decided retail was my passion. So I went into Macy's department store retailing as a gross margin planner for 3 years. I then decided I wanted to work in Europe. So I went to INSEAD, both in Fontainebleau and here. And after INSEAD, I still said I still wanted to work in retail. I didn't try to get too deviated from, consulting or finance careers. So I went to work for Louis Vuitton 3 years in Paris at the headquarters doing internal control. At the same time we met during our MBA in 2008. However, we never dated while we were at INSEAD. 3 years afterwards, we were like, oh, maybe now that he's in Hong Kong and I'm in Paris, maybe now it will work. So he actually convinced me to move to Italy because he's like, well, I've never worked in Italy. I would really want to go back. So I managed to get a job there. A month later, he joins me back in Italy. 2 months after that, he actually abandons me and moves back to Singapore. So for about a year and a half, I had an amazing team and amazing time in Italy. But at the same time, LV was consolidating their offices and was merging their Milan office back into Paris. So I think that was the first time we had to kind of sit down and decide where would be a possibility for both of us to live. Moving back to Paris, for me, I love Paris. For him, he doesn't speak French and he's in shipping and there's no port. So it's a bit of a, we decided on Singapore where you can have shipping and a bit of retail. Because even in Italy at the time, as a foreigner, the market is not as flexible for me.
Pass it over to Tim. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I started my career as a strategy consultant at PwC in London. Then I moved to Madrid. Then I came to INSEAD to do my MBA, and then afterwards I spent 3 years in the Netherlands working for Maersk in shipping. That was my first experience in shipping, and it was a good opportunity for me to learn a bit more about the industry. That's where my family business is operating. And so I joined the family business in 2010 in the Hong Kong office, and then from there I moved to Singapore a year later to sort of turn around the business here and then grow it. And so we are the 6th generation. We have 7 people from the family involved in the business. 4 from the 5th generation and 3 from the 6th. And all 7 of us are very actively involved in the business. We all head up one or more business units, and the 7 of us are also part of the board of the group. So the main business, I would say, is probably fuel trading together with a ship agency. We have a ship owning arm. We do catering for ships. We manage some yacht marinas around the world, including the one in Sentosa. We do freight forwarding. We have an IT business and a few other businesses, but it's I would say that 90% of what we do is related to shipping. That's more or less it.
And they call you when they want you to come to work.
Yes, that was more or less it. I was asked to join the company, and one of the many unwritten rules that we have is that your father or immediate relative is never involved in the selection process of a junior family member. So first thing is the conversation was not with my father, because my father was not involved in that discussion. Precisely one of the rules is that he's completely out of it. He wasn't, the only thing he knew them from me. So I was updating him on how it was going, but he was not involved in that process at all. So discussions were with my 3 uncles, and yes, they were very friendly, but definitely not easy. Coming from a consulting background, and then having also the next 3 years in a very large multinational like Maersk, I liked everything to be on a PowerPoint presentation and with a clear structure and knowing exactly what I'm going to do in 20 years' time and so on. And that was definitely not the case in my family business. So I didn't even know what my role was going to be, who I was going to report to. So, for example, the idea was that I would take over the leadership of this large business unit from one of my uncles, but it was not clear when this handover would happen, and in the meanwhile, would I report to him? Because, of course, there's a lot of directors in this business unit, so what was my relationship with these directors going to be? Was I going to be their boss? Or was I going to be below them, or same level as them, and that was absolutely not clear, and that is actually one of the things that made it definitely harder for me during the first few years. The first offer, let's say, I got was exactly 1/3 of what I was making at Maersk. So again, money was not the key point, but of course, when they offer you 1/3 of what you make at the time, you feel a bit unappreciated. So that was. I also wanted to be on the board from day one of the group, and I didn't want to be on the board to take decisions. I want to be on the board to see and learn how they were taking decisions, because particularly 2 of my uncles are quite old, and they were already quite old, and I knew that I didn't have all my life to learn from them. So I really wanted to be able to spend time with them when they were taking decisions. So that was one of the challenging parts, because they didn't really understand why I was so stubborn on wanting to be on the board of the group from day one, and also that was going to create potential issues with my 2 cousins who are older than me, who have been in the company since 10 years before me, and they were not on the board. So it was not easy. It was, and maybe being more prepared for that type of conversation would have helped.
Pearl, welcome.
Thank you.
This is from Singapore.
Yes,
The home of the
hailing
gold.
from Singapore. So my name is Pearl Yu. My family business is based in Singapore, and we manufacture power cables, power and control cables. So this was started about 26 years ago by my parents. And our bread and butter has always been in building infrastructure, but over the years we've diversified into oil and gas and data communication as well. And I think about 30% of our business right now, it's in export. So this is also an area that we're looking at. So when my dad made the call and said, I hope you can come back, I'm very thankful that Derek was also very supportive of the decision. So we decided to come back together, and instead of working for somebody else, we said, okay, why not bring the talent in? And it's been about 2.5 years so far that we've worked together.
Great. Thank you, Pearl. Derek, let's hear your story.
Thank you. My name is Derek. I'm a Chinese American, grew up in California. So like what Pearl was mentioning, at that time, actually after INSEAD, we were doing long distance for all 3 years. She was rotating, I was rotating. So, so at that time, we thought that our last rotation just happened at both in Shanghai. So that was our plan, is to settle in Shanghai and have a career there. So the call is actually an email. It wasn't a call, it was an email. So she forwarded that email to me. And as soon as I saw that email, I told her, you're going to go back. Because knowing how the father was, very typical, the patriarch, the silent type, doesn't speak much. But the way that he expressed that in that email, there's no questions that Pearl is going to go back. So and at that point, the discussion turned to, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to do long distance again, or are we going to relocate to Singapore? And if we do, my career opportunity in Singapore was much limited versus in Shanghai. So would I do a career change again or join the family business? I think that's how the discussion started.
Okay. Pearl, okay, would you share a little, what was in that letter your father wrote? That Derek saw it and it said to him, she's going back. When you read it, what did you say?
Well, basically, I think that the gist of what my dad was saying is, you know, yes, it's true, you are pursuing a career there, but it's also equally important to look at what you have here. And instead of, because he was also asking about how I'm negotiating with Roche, what's the pay and the position and everything, and he says, you know, is it worth doing all that, or can you spend your talent and your time on family? So I mean, it was he didn't directly ask me come back, but based on that email, it was very clear. I mean, I think what Derek said is true. My dad's the silent type. He doesn't really request. Yeah, so but he just lays out the facts, and it's just clear from there that, you know, he hopes that I can come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you start the conversation about Derek coming back also? Do you remember? Go ahead, Derek, tell the story.
I don't quite remember how it wasn't immediate that the start. The discussion was she went back first. She went back to Singapore, and I was still in Shanghai for another year and a half. So it was a long discussion throughout to see step by step. Initially, I think Pearl was the main recruiter. She was like a little bit by a little bit kind of pitching. And then obviously I still had a little hesitation, but I think when the parents had the full support, I think that's when I say, okay, maybe that's, it's a go.
Let's just talk about dual careers, because this is bigger than family business. It really is. You all have careers that take a lot of your time and a lot of commitment. I mean, how do you manage it? How do you manage the stress, the travel, the work schedules, the life balance?
I think for us, obviously, it's such a cliche to say having kids is a blessing, but a different dimension for us is that the fact that we work together. So before the kids, we essentially have breakfast together. We drive up to the company together. We have lunch together, and then everything's together. So it was an unspoken rule that our discussion about work stopped as soon as we get back home. So for other couples, when they come home, they kind of know each other. We go to separate rooms. As soon as we get home, we turn on our TV and we just don't talk to each other for it's a long time. But having kids, we're very hands-on parents. So it gives us a very, I don't say distraction, but a very new, exciting dimension in our lives. That the family business obviously is still important, but now we have two very different aspects of our life that we can devote our times and energy to. I think that helps.
Okay. But you have this unwritten rule: when you walk through the door at night, there's no more business.
We still talk a little bit, but usually it stops. Yeah.
It stops some. Yeah. Okay. Now, you guys don't work together, so you don't have to deal with that one. But how do you deal with all the other demands on your lives?
I think we do have busy lives, of course, with hobbies, interests, and work, of course. One thing we do is we have dinner together basically every night. And one of the, again, also unwritten rules is that we don't have any device or TV or anything when we have dinner. So then we have a chat, a talk, whether it's about work or something else, doesn't matter, but we talk, and that's probably the moment in which we can share some ideas or some thoughts, and because of course during the day we don't see each other. In the morning we briefly see each other, but I I train very early in the morning, and then by the time I come back she's leaving to go to work, so it's we don't get to talk a lot during the day, and then so the evening is really when we can share some ideas, and I like to when I have an issue at work, I like to ask for her opinion, because she's kind of outside, so she can give me a different point of view. And sometimes you're so much into a problem that it's difficult to take a step back and really have a cold mind about it. And also, since she's not from the industry, for me it's even better, because she doesn't have any preconcept or preconceived idea. So it's for me it's good. In our family we have, you said almost a rule. It's a rule. We don't have in-laws allowed in the business, and we know that. With that rule, we potentially give up some talent. We are aware of that. On the other hand, we see that as probably the more conservative or kind of less risky approach, because as we're saying, we have a lot of conflict of interest in a family business, and by having even the in-laws involved in the business, then of course you increase the complexity of a business. It can go really well. It can also not go really well. So we prefer to play safe and not involve in-laws.
So Derek, now you carry an American passport and you grew up in California. What's it like coming back to Asia and joining an Asian family business?
It's not as bad as you make it out to be. Even though I grew up in the States, I think my family is very traditional Chinese. So I was born in China. I left when I was 10. So I think culturally I'm pretty Chinese. And the fact that after graduation I spent the significant time in both Taiwan and Shanghai really got me acclimated back to the Asian culture. So that really helped, especially language-wise, because in Keystone Cable our main language is Mandarin. And my Mandarin was horrible when I came back. She laughed at me the first time I spoke was in INSEAD. Yeah, but because of those rotation in Taiwan and Shanghai, now I can pretty fluently communicate in the company. So so culturally it wasn't too bad. So I have to say. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add too that that's also the reason we felt comfortable recruiting him too, because I think culturally, even though he's from the States, but he has that traditional culture that suits what the family culture is, the family business culture. So I think it was also, to me, a more rational decision to bring him in rather than just purely emotional that says, I'm hoping to work with my husband. His strength was in the finance portion. So he ended up taking care of that portion and now a supply chain as well.
Wait a minute, you let an in-law touch the money? We wouldn't teach that.
Yeah, but out of
Rule
all
number
of
one.
us, he's the best person for it.
Okay, then you can do it.
Meritocracy. But we also made sure that, I think he can touch on the in-law and him relationship bit, but at least for us, we made sure that our roles were very clearly separate. So I'm looking at HR marketing, and even though I value his opinion, we ultimately know the decisions that we can take for the department and try to reduce the chance of conflict as much as possible. Because however much you say it, however rational the two of us we are, but at the end of the day, if you have too many conflicts that's going on, if you create that kind of environment, it is going to affect the personal relationship. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we really set out to do. And I think also the physical distance helps. So he mentioned tuning out when we go back home, but even in the office, we're physically seated the furthest away from each other. And I think that really helps as well, to have our own personal workspace.
Yeah, as far as the in-law goes, one of the reasons I decided to join the company was the fact that obviously working in the same place, the same location was the main, but also the fact that the makeup of the company, it was probably one of the least complicated family business that I know. Pearl is the only child, so as far as the business family goes, it's only the parents and her. There are no cousins, no uncles, no aunts. So I know that going in there won't be that many of those so-called in-law conflicts or the relatives conflicts. So that helped. And as far as the relationship with the in-laws, I think it really helped that her parents were also educated in the West, so they're fairly open-minded. So when they welcomed me in, they were very hands-off as far as what I could do or what I wanted to do. And then as far as my relationship with Pearl, I think it really strengthened more than I expected. Just the fact that we had this common interest, common experience, and what we've gone through, or more importantly, what we want to drive the company toward in the future. I think that really helped.
For our generation, I think that one key aspect was picking the right people. Now, I mean, I'm not the right person to comment on that because I'm in the sixth generation, but I think it's really about choosing the ones who have the right motivation to join the business. And in our family business, not only we don't put pressure on young generations to join the business, we actually actively try to discourage them from joining the business, because the idea is that we only want those who are very motivated and passionate about the business to join, and we will only consider those who we consider to be motivated and with the right attitude.
Pearl, you have 2 children. What are you going to do with those kids in that next generation? Now that you got everything figured out for the 2 of you, we heard it's a process that never ends. We were talking about that this morning.
It is a process that doesn't end. Our kids are they're twins, and they're about 1.5 years now. So, but we've already been bringing them to company events. So it starts young, right? You mentioned the case where the coaching and everything started at 7 years old. So for us, I think it's similar. I felt very fortunate that my parents, they never really pressured me to come back right off school and anything. I had the opportunity to go out there and do what I wanted to. So I think that's something that I'm definitely going to give the kids too, give them that opportunity to decide as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask each of you to give one piece of advice. One piece of advice. Alex, you talk for in-laws.
Maybe I'll take I think it was one of your aunt's advice that his family made a beautiful video for us on our wedding, giving us advice on how to make a marriage successful. And she said, marriage should be like 2 cypress trees, living side by side, but not in the shadow of each other. I think so far for us, it's working pretty well.
For me, I think that one of the main weaknesses of family businesses is the potential lack of meritocracy. So my advice would be to focus on how to address that potential weakness. So how to create a meritocratic structure and culture within the family business.
I think similar to Tim, because for my family business, while we're talking today about succession planning of first generation, second generation, or basically the business owners, what I'm very concerned about is also the succession planning of the key people within the company. So how do we attract people and how do we retain them? That's something that is very much close to my heart, and something that, if any advice, I think that's a key to focus on, because the company is only as good as the people who are in it.
Be patient. I think joining a family business is a long-term endeavor, and everything is a process. It takes time. It takes time to establish the relationship with the people in the company, and more importantly, it takes time to establish the trust. I think that's the most important. So have the patience to understand that things will work out if you have the right attitude and you have the right support.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and for sharing your ideas with the group. I've learned a lot again.